I wanted to get on for a moment just to kind of speak a little bit because you kind of know how it's been with all that's kind of been going on, where, like I kind of stated in my last video, I'd be staying off of social media for a while because it's just a little time of memorial for my great aunt and kind of a time when I'm mourning right now and kind of have to stay clear of all the triggers. So that's kind of why I'm kind of keeping things safe and keeping things so they need to be, and why I'm kind of coming on just to tell you all that I just wanted to kind of say a few words about her. I mean, she lived quite the life, and thankfully she is better off in heaven now. And I mean, even before she passed away, I mean, her husband, who was my grandmother's brother, did, and my grandmother, who he was the brother of, had also passed away before she did. And of course, I'd say she probably does have, some of her own family left. I know she has a nephew who's still living that probably came from her brother, who I think was her only sibling. And so I'd say for what we kind of have here, just have a little bit to say for her right now. And of all things, I'd say one of the main reasons in her memory I'm kind of avoiding getting on social media right now is because she, like, whenever I used to visit her to take over for her some food that my mother cooked for her, because my mother is kind of in a state where she can't really take all those trips that much. She has to be home a lot and she's on a walker, so she would cook for my great aunt and have me kind of, take the dish over to her. And of course, my great aunt, even before she went to the nursing home, she stayed in her house a lot. And I'd say over the past few days, I mean, she kind of got a weak heart. And they started to move her into the nursing home for a day or two, and then she died just a few days after that. And we kind of figured she was sick with something, and the doctors didn't know what to treat or how to treat it because they didn't know what it was. And what I want to kind of come to say now is that whenever I would kind of go over to her house to visit her and talk to her about just some of the little troubles I faced here and there on social media, she would always tell me why social media wasn't for her and why she would avoid it, and kind of even suggesting to me that I don't spend a lot of time on there because I know that it's just a kind of place where we just have different views, and I have mine and other people have theirs, and just all the kinds of confusion we have. And it's kind of like, I'd say, probably a little more behind the times for her, so that's kind of the reason why she wouldn't really fool with it. And I mean, she was elderly, like in her 80s, maybe early 90s. I'm not sure. I think she was only in her late 80s. So, that's kind of just the way we assumed things and how we regarded things, and why right now it's kind of like, if anything triggering to me comes up on social media, it's just probably going to remind me of the fact that I'm mourning right now, just because of the way she give me little talkings to about it. So that's kind of the reason I, like I say, avoid it right now. But I did want to tell you a few little stories about her life. I mean, she married my grandmother's brother, and I mean, she had some type of thing wrong with her body all her life, which was the reason why when she had her first son, he survived. But whatever this physical problem she had was the reason why when she had two other babies later on, each of those babies got sick and died from whatever was in her. And whatever this issue was, it was one of the things it's more treatable these days than it was in those days. But in those days, it wasn't as treatable, so it was kind of a condition that would allow you to have one healthy child who would survive, but then, cause any child you had after that to get sick and died. And so her two babies are buried there in that cemetery, and they were probably some of the first people of the family that I can think of that were. They died before I was born, and then there were other family members who died before I was born who were buried in that cemetery as well on my mother's side. And I'd say that when it came down to it, I mean, even after she lost the babies before I was born, I was about 25 in 2005 when she lost her husband to cancer, which was my grandmother's brother. And then it was probably in 2020, around the time of the pandemic, their only survived son, who was already an adult, passed away. And so, she was kind of sad because first she had to lose her babies, then she had to lose her husband, then she had to lose her only living child too. And of course, by that time, I mean, she was already married to her second husband. And, he is still survived and in the nursing home. Even her second husband is somebody who we've known all our life because he's been a preacher and a missionary with the same missions work with which my grandfather has been the secretary. My grandfather has been the treasurer, and my dad's been the secretary. And we just kind of knew a lot of directors from that church. We held the conferences for that missions work in the church I grew up in, so he was already like family to us in a lot of ways. His first wife had already passed away even before he married my great aunt, after her first husband did. And so I would probably say that, there's some people among us who you say their lives are just such adventures. That's kind of the way hers was, and I just remember good things about her from when we were kids. I mean, I have several bolo ties that belonged to her husband, my grandmother's brother, when he was alive. I had several hand-me-down pairs of cowboy boots from him, but he had already put some wear into them by the time I put some wear into them, so they were getting really old and bad and out of shape. At a certain point, thought I'd be saving them to make art out of, but when my shop area just got too full of things like that, I just had to throw them away because they were just kind of getting rather a little bit more useless here and there. So we kind of took care of that little issue. And I'd say the thing of it is that after her son passed away, he left me with many more of the bolo ties that her son kept after his father passed. And so it was just kind of adventurous. And I'd say I still have a little cowboy shirt of his that he went square dancing in, my great uncle that is. So I'd say that there were times when, like, they used to come over to our house on Christmas Eve and bring each of us kids a big bag full of presents. There were times on Halloween and on trick-or-treat night we'd go over to their house to see them, and they'd give us little bags of candy for Halloween. And of all the things I remember, all the gifts I made for them, you'll probably kind of see more recently, as of last year, on my Facebook page, and even like at my show this Saturday, these little gingerbread men that I make out of brown socks. I made one of those for my great aunt in Christmas of 2000. So, that was kind of just one of the things I did, and I've kind of kept more of them this year, and I've made more just thinking back on that, purchased brown socks in a bag from the Salvation Army from which to do that. I'd say that, And even for my great uncle himself, one time I kind of took one of my old pairs of cowboy boots that I wore when I was a teenager and kind of like cut the tall part off of the boot and made a face of a reindeer on the foot of the boot, and kind of stuffed it with paper and two twigs for its antlers, and that was just how I kind of made that little thing. And so I'd say, of all things, I mean, I even made them little bird houses that they could kind of put in their yard and feed their birds. So it was always just quite the adventure those days. I can't remember what all I made them, but I even remember the year that my great uncle had cancer, and it would be his last Christmas with us. I went over there with my guitar to play and sing the song Santa Claus is a Legend that I wrote about Father Nicholas. So I just want to say that I believe they were all people who were truly of faith and truly of believing. And I know one thing is that my great aunt is happy now. She's up there with her first husband, my grandmother's brother. She's up there with all three of her children now. And that's why I just like to think and say that she's in a much happier place. We don't know when the arrangements for the service are yet, but I just had something to say tonight because, it's been quite a year for us all. I've had quite the summer with my diet and exercise routine, and we've had so much to take care of and so much to go through, and we're just thankful that she's better off on Streets of Gold. Thank you so much for watching.